Hi everyone, welcome back to the Sportlight Show where real conversations happen. I know it's been a while since our last recording, but today we are here in Nairobi with an interesting conversation lined up for you. I am thrilled to be joined by someone who is making big moves in the African sports space, Sandra Kimokoti. She is the Chief Commercial Officer and co-founder of Twende Sports and also holds an MBA in sports business. So, as we get in, be ready to learn more about what it takes to own and run a team when it comes to investment, when it comes to talent acquisition, driving revenue, building a fan base. That's all we are expecting from this conversation. So let's get into it. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
How are you feeling today?
Good.
With everything that is happening, you have BAL going on, you have the league going on, you still have Twende to run.
Yeah.
How are things going?
Pretty good. It's a busy time, busy season, but busy is good because it also means there's more eyeballs on the team and on what we're doing.
So mostly how I like to start off the conversation is to first get to know you.
Okay.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about Sandra? Who
Okay.
Sandra is? I know you have a background in sports, like a depth in that field.
Yeah.
So you can give us that rundown of how you grew up, the exposure to sports.
Okay.
Yeah, so that people can know. Some viewers might recognize you from rugby, but you can just let us know how that was.
Okay. Yeah, so my name is Sandra Kimokoti. As you mentioned, I'm a co-founder of Twende Sports. Twende Sports is the parent company of Nairobi City Thunder. So we own Nairobi City Thunder. I'm the chief commercial officer. So on a day-to-day, I oversee revenue and brand. So on the revenue side, everything from sponsorship, merchandising, and then on the brand side, all our media and marketing efforts. Yeah, so my journey with sports began as a child. I was born into I would say, a pretty athletic family.
That was in Kenya.
In Kenya, yeah.
Okay.
So I have four brothers. All of them played sports. Everybody was a two-sport athlete. So, but the common sport was basketball. So it was either basketball and rugby, basketball and swimming, basketball and football. For me, I played basketball in primary school, high school. I ran track, and then did my undergrad in the US. And so when I got to the US, I sort of realized I did not have the height or the talent to play college ball in the US. And so my first week on campus, I picked up rugby. I literally just saw posters on campus like, "Oh, come try rugby," and then I went.
Yeah, I had this, on the moth you were giving your story.
Yes.
So I had like was it your coach or someone who
Yeah,
touched
so
your shoulders? Can you tell us a bit
that
about
first practice, we were being taught how to like pass and tackle. And I tackled somebody and she was like, "You come back tomorrow."
Yeah.
And so that's how I stayed. I joined the team my first week of college. Yeah, so then I stayed and I played Division 1 rugby at Brown, which was the school I went to. And then end of my third year, came back home, for break, and then that's when I joined the Lionesses. So played with the Lionesses. 2014, for about 4 months, went back to school, finished my senior year of uni, and then came back home, continued playing rugby, rejoined the Lionesses again. But then end of 2016, so this was 2016, end of 2016, it was getting a bit tough to balance like my rugby career and my corporate job because like Lionesses would train in the morning like 7 to 10 a.m. So that means I'm getting into work at 11. Then I'm leaving work at like 7, 8 p.m. Before you get home, resting, it's pretty intense. And so then like Lionesses would train Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then my club would train Tuesday, Thursdays. So I was pretty exhausted and it was getting a bit tough to balance. And then honestly, I also just felt like the return on investment on my time with the Lionesses just wasn't it, right?
So that's when you're looking at
like in
is there a future?
2014 when I was on the team, we were being given 6,000 shillings a month and we didn't have contracts. So it's just 6,000 bob. And so if the union decides this month they don't have money to give you, you don't even have a contract that you can be like, but here's the contract I signed for my 6K.
Yeah.
Then 2014 they doubled the amount, so then it was 12K. But it was a struggle to that it wasn't like the thing that was keeping me going financially compared to my corporate job. And then sometimes it came down to a choice between, do you want to do one thing really well, or do you want to do two things in a mediocre way? And so I felt like trying to, handle my corporate job and being a semi-professional player was just too difficult with the time commitments it had. I had this career growth opportunities in my corporate job. So I picked that. And I stepped away from rugby actually in end of 2016. But then end of 2017, I kind of knew that I want to go back into the sports space. But this time I wanted to go back on the business side of things. For me, I just didn't understand how we're getting paid like 12,000 bob, and you're playing for the country. So
Like it doesn't sound even right.
it is, yeah, it doesn't even sound right.
Yeah.
And I know that for some of my teammates who rugby was like was their main activity, they didn't have like another gig going on. It was a struggle, right? Because that 12K, you need to pay rent, you need to get yourself to training, you need to buy food. If your boots are worn out, you need to get new boots, maybe you need to get supplements. Yeah, and you're just seeing people doing the mental maths, and like it was difficult for people. Anyway, so for me, I was like, I was very curious about what the business side of things looks like, but I still felt like I had some more growing up to do professionally. So I actually ended up staying at my job. It was a management consulting job. So I ended up staying there until 2021. Before then, I made the transition into the sports industry. And how I made that transition, so I was debating: do I go to school for a master's in sports business? Do I just try and get a job in the industry? And I was looking at the jobs available, and I was just like, I don't think I want to, first of all, like join any of these organizations. Having spent some time in the rugby world, there's things I had seen that I wasn't very happy about. From a management perspective, from a player welfare perspective, and I was like, do I really want to maybe join this ecosystem in the way it currently exists? But I also knew that I had a particular skill set, because in my corporate job, I was a strategy consultant. So I would help organizations, whether it's corporates, foundations, governments, think about their strategy and how they grow, how they enter new markets. And I was like, I feel like this is something I can do in the sports industry, and help teams and leagues think about how to grow and how to be more sustainable.
And during this time, like that period between 2017 to 2021,
Yeah.
Though you're not involved like directly,
Yeah.
were you still like having some interactions with activities?
Purely as a fan, just watching the games. I think for me, honestly, leaving rugby, it was a bit of I don't want to call it traumatic, but there's some stuff that went down that year that I wasn't very happy about at one of the clubs I had played for. And so it was almost just like an emotional wound. And so there's a part of me that felt like I just needed to disconnect for a while. So yeah, I remained like a fan, but I wasn't really plugged into that ecosystem.
Okay.
And so then 2021, I decided that, okay, 2019 was when I made the decision that I was going to make the transition through a master's program. And then when I was looking at a few different programs, I liked the NYU program because it was global. As much as in the US, the program had a global focus. So the thing with US schools is many of them can be very insular, and they just look at the US market. But this one, I felt like you'd get a chance to explore like things in Europe, things in Asia, things in Africa. So then I applied, I got in. I was supposed to go in 2020, but COVID happened. So I ended up going in 2021, and I did that program for a year and a half, which was really exciting because, first of all, the student body was very international. So I got to interact with a lot of people from different parts of the world. And then when I was in school, I spent 8 months working with a sports agency in the US called Elevate Sports Ventures. And I was part of what they call their insights team. So that team would do strategy work for sports teams in the US and in Europe. And they would do things like sponsorship evaluation. So if somebody wants to put their logo on the court of a college basketball team, how should that team charge them for that branding? And then we do like stadium feasibility analyses. So if an NFL team is wanting to construct a new stadium, there's the architects, but then we'd come in and do like fan surveys and understand what are fans willing to pay for a particular experience. You have regular seats, and then you have suites, you have lodges. What amenities do they want to see? How should you design the facility in a way that they feel like they're getting a premium experience? So all these things, I think, for me just were really eye-opening, and it was really interesting work. And a lot of the work that I did in that period of time was with teams, and so I felt like I had gotten a lot of good exposure into the teams, but I had not gotten a lot of exposure into like leagues. And so when I graduated, I was very intentional about trying to find work with a league. And so I joined a small startup cycling league in the US called the National Cycling League. And I joined them as a chief of staff. So basically helping the CEO with raising capital, because it was a venture funded league. So helping them raise capital, basically setting up new systems and processes for the league. It was an incredible learning experience. All this time, my career was very US focused. I was living in New York. But then when I was in the last semester of my master's program, a friend that I used to work with before said, hey, there's this guy called Colin. He's trying to do something in basketball in Kenya. Maybe I can link you guys up and you can see what you can do. And so he put us in touch. And at that time, Colin, who's one of my co-founders, was running a different sports organization, trying to do like facilities and academies. And so I was put in touch with him, and I was volunteering my time to just help them with sponsorship. And I think 2 weeks in, he said, hey, actually, I know you just started, but I'm actually leaving. And I want to like actually start something that's just purely focused on basketball. And he's like, do you want to come and start it with me?
Oh, so there was something else?
There was something else. And so when he said, you want to come and start this thing with me? And I was like, yeah, let's see what we can do together. And there were 2 other people involved as well that I didn't know, but like had been introduced to Colin separately. So this was, I think, towards the end of 2022, and that's actually how Twende Sports was born. So there's myself, there's Colin, who's our CEO, and then there's Kushin. Kushin is Somali-Canadian. He's played in Kenya for a long time, won a couple of basketball championships with KPA. So he's our GM. And then there's Domingo. So Steven is he's a basketball player, he's a pro. He's played in Europe, played in the G League. He's captained the Nigerian basketball team before, so he's Nigerian American. So he's our 4th co-founder.
So like your team is like an Avengers team.
It's an Avengers team. There's a Kenyan, there's a Somali Canadian, there's an American, there's a Nigerian.
Now with different even like
different experiences.
Different experience with the in the industry.
So 2023 January we registered Twende Sports. And then 2023 July we acquired Nairobi City Thunder. Yeah, so that's how Twende began. Before
we get to like Nairobi City Thunder and the acquisition that happened, what like when you were sitting together as co-founders, what's the vision like? What is the end goal for Twende Sports?
Yeah, so there's a reason we called it Twende Sports and not Twende Basketball, because we, as much as all of us had a link to basketball, we said also basketball as a starting point. We're like, let's do something in basketball, and then down the line, we might actually go into other sports. But then, I mean, Steven is a basketball player. Kushin had played basketball. He had managed the Somali national team. Colin had played basketball. I had played basketball a very long time ago. So that was a space we were going to do something in. And then also one of the things that was pulling us to basketball was the NBA Africa investment into the Basketball Africa League and basketball in the continent. So it felt like there were tailwinds behind the sport on the continent, and so it felt like a very exciting space to play in at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now, like, you understand how the African market, the sports African market looks like. So when you were thinking through this decision to start from Kenya, why Kenya other than doing it in Uganda, or is it because your heritage are here, but
yeah, I mean, we were here, right? Colin has been living here for more than 12 years. I'm from here, and I wanted to move back home. Kushin was living and working in Kenya, and we knew the Kenyan market well, so it was just really it's where we are.
Or is more of the known?
Yeah, it's what we know. It's where we've, I mean, say grown up, because we're all adults, but it's where we live and breathe, and so it was just a natural.
And in comparison,
yeah,
like with other countries, where are we, like Kenya, on that pedestal in terms of the sports space?
I think it's tough because it can be so sports specific, right? If you take track and athletics, for example, Kenya is very far ahead. But if you take certain sports, we are really trailing, depending on which country you're comparing with.
Yeah.
But I personally don't like sort of these comparisons with other countries, because it feels artificial. Like you're not operating in that ecosystem. So as long as you can make something work for you in your ecosystem, like that's what really matters. I think one of the things that Kenya stands out for is that people are willing to pay for experiences, good experiences. And so as long as you can find a way to give people like a good experience, you'll be able to monetize it.
So you had to get an outfit a local outfit. Why Thunder of all teams? How did you come down to that decision?
Yeah, so we knew that we wanted to eventually have a team in the Basketball Africa League, and so that means the way the qualification process works is you have to first win your local league. If you win your local league, you get a chance to represent, to play other top clubs from other African countries for a chance to qualify.
Yeah.
So to win the local league, I mean, the top division is the Premier League. So it had to be a team that's in the Premier League. The other option was you just start a team from scratch, but then you have to go through all the divisions. That would take 3 to 4 years before you can get promoted every year.
Yeah.
It's a huge investment and time that we didn't have. So then it was really, so then we had to acquire a team in the Premier League. And if you look at how teams are structured, you have some teams that are owned by the government, or rather they're parastatal teams.
Yeah.
KPA, Ulinzi. So those teams are out of the question because they team is serikali, right?
Yeah.
And then you have other teams that are corporate affiliated, so like Equity, those kinds of teams. So those are also out of the question because it belongs to a corporate. So it was really just, it had to be a community team, and there's not too many of those around.
Yeah.
And the guys who were running Thunder at the time seemed quite amenable. They had done a really good job of, just through their own pockets and their own dedication, actually being able to sustain the team for a team that had been, self-funded for a long time. I mean, there were periods in the history where they had sponsors, but by the time we were coming in, it was a self-funded team. They had done a really good job of, competing in the Premier League. I think they had even come third the previous season, and that's with really minimal resources.
Yeah.
And they were, pretty open to partnering, and so then it became Thunder as the team that we ended up
And was it
acquiring.
Yeah, was it an acquisition that you can
We acquired the team.
Oh, there's a value to it that was.
Yeah, that I won't disclose here, but we acquired the team.
Okay. Now, once you acquired that team, there are things that you immediately started working on.
Yeah.
When it comes to the structure of the team, the talent acquisition.
Yeah.
How was that like for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, so the first thing is talent. So we acquired the team, but that doesn't mean that every player that was playing on the team was automatically going to get a slot, right? So then there was like a tryout. There was tryouts that we did, and then we picked the talent that we felt, met the caliber of people that we wanted to have with the team. Because I remember the goal was always to win the Premier League.
Yeah.
So there was a tryout phase, and then we gave every athlete and every coach a contract. So at least what that does is it lets the players know that they can bank on this, and they can fully commit to excellence on this thing, and they don't have to have a side hustle, right? And I think you see it in the talent. You see it in the performance because people are really locked in and really focused on performance.
Yeah.
There's a few guys who met the cut and then already had day jobs, right? And so then, of course, can't force them to quit their day jobs. But then, they've still been able to keep up with the training demands. And so there's a few of those, but for the majority of the team, this is their full-time job.
Yeah. And that's really good to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's the talent aspect of it. And then there's now everything else that happens off the court. So there's business elements of the team. And so maybe I'll talk about sort of revenue and brand, because that's what I oversee. So for sports teams to generate revenue, you need a following, because you need people that are going to come to your games, people that are going to buy merchandise. You need sponsors to come on board and fund the team. Yeah. But the way that you get that is by building a brand that people want to be associated with. It's cool, it's vibrant. If you're not there, you're feeling FOMO, So a lot of work went into building the brand and telling the story of the brand.
Yeah.
And then the on-court performance actually helps with that, because people also like being associated with the success.
Yeah.
No, but, you're not cool if you're always at the bottom of the table. There's a certain element of the cool factor that also comes with being a winner. So those things were happening in tandem. So on the brand building side, I think when we acquired Thunder, so the team had a Facebook and an IG account. I think the Facebook account had 1,200 people. IG had 7,000. And so where we are today, when is today? 10th May? Yeah, so we're about 23,000 on IG, maybe 8.5 thousand on Facebook, and then 40,000 on TikTok, right? Yeah. Which for us is massive, because it just means we've been able to grow the eyeballs tremendously.
Yeah, in such a short duration of time as well.
Yeah. And I think basketball lends itself to that very well, because it's such a fast-paced sport. People are going back and down the court very quickly. So it's very easy to create highlights. Like every layup, every dunk, every pass can be a highlight. And so also content-wise, basketball is a really good sport for content, even for guys who don't want to watch the full game. So yeah, we doubled down on social media. And then we actually, a couple of months ago, as we were thinking about just how do we supercharge this growth, an element of it was also understanding what are fans wanting to see. So we actually took some time to talk to fans. So there's different categories of fans. So there's fans who are like diehard basketball fans. And so then for them, it's like, what do you want to see? And the things they were telling us were, okay, we want, for example, like I want to see this particular player, like Tyler's game day prep. Like what goes into his like workout routines? What does his rest days look like? And then you have fans who come to the games, but they're not like, okay, they like basketball, but they're there for the vibes and the environment, right? And some fans like that, they want to see like now the players' lives off the court. Like they want to get into like the funny side of the players and like their life stories. And so it gave us good insight into like what kind of content should we be creating and the kind of storytelling that we need to be doing to make fans, like to create content that resonates with fans. Yeah, so double down on the media side of things. And then as the media side of things started picking up, it became easier to start talking to brands because no brand is going to come and work with you if you have no following or like if you don't have a community.
So as you get to that point of brands, I'd want to ask this question because a lot of corporates, many corporates in Kenya, or let's say corporates, even the ones that are not corporates, usually shy off from sports.
Okay.
Locally, unless there is the reputation for with our sporting organizations, it's quite bad. But how do you actually initiate that conversation? How do you run that conversation with skepticism, the skeptical people that now you can come and actually get value out of this sport?
Yeah, I think that I believe that corporates do see the value in partnering with sports because sport fans are very loyal community members. Like they'll typically watch most, if not all, the games of the team that they follow, and so I believe that sports, like corporates, do want to be in that space, but then the thing that makes them shy away is just like management and fears of mismanagement. Maybe players are not going to get paid. Maybe the money is going to get embezzled. And so for us, what we focused on, so I think two things. One, building a brand that people want to be associated with, like fans want to be associated with. And then when corporates see how quickly it's going, they're like, okay, maybe we can work with these guys. And then when they start sort of getting into the community, they start coming to games, they start hearing things about us. The things that now they're telling us they hear is like, oh, you guys are really professional. Your players are well taken care of. Like you'll never see a player posting on socials being like, Thunder wajanilipa, I've not been paid for 2 months, you know? And so because they don't hear these negative stories about us, there's a certain level of credibility that our brand comes with. It's a clean brand. We don't have, corruption scandals tagging behind us. We don't have issues of, player welfare issues that players have been mishandled or things like that. So I think we've built a credible brand. A trustworthy brand that has made it a lot easier to work with corporates.
Okay, and how is that conversation? Well, not the conversation itself. When you're reaching out, when you're starting, did you like plan out to say that we want to grow to this point, then approach the brands, or we'll approach them as we grow? No,
for us, we just went out the door and we were like, we need people to come on board immediately.
Even from the start?
From the start. They did not necessarily come on immediately because everybody's looking at, okay, what value am I going to get out of this? We did have one brand that came out quite quickly. So there's Thunder, but then in Twende Sports, we also have a men's and women's team in the Nairobi Street League. And so we had a brand, Ikoa, that came out immediately to support that, which was fantastic. For Thunder, it took a bit of time, but there are some brands who came on early on, but those were mostly for in-kind partnerships. So they were not necessarily giving us like cash value, but for example, we partnered with Bio, who would give us like yogurt and milk and whatnot. So there was a couple of those kinds of partnerships. Our Our jersey partner Afrosport was also giving us a certain amount of merchandise in kind. So in the beginning, there was a lot of in kind value being exchanged rather, as opposed to cash. And then as the eyeballs behind the team began to grow, it gave us now more leverage to restructure some of those partnerships. And so it got to a point where we said, okay, now we need more like cash coming in the door. And so if you look at the brands who are partnering with us today, most of those are cash deals. Yeah.
So I heard one of the interviews that you had, you were saying that you build up this relationship for the long term. So are there brands which you had approached at the beginning, you are working with them now because they have seen you guys grow?
Yeah.
They did not invest at the beginning but are here right now with you guys?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So there's some who are here now. There's some who the conversation has reopened in terms of, okay, what can we do? This season like is underway, but what can we do for the next season? Yeah.
Okay.
It's like a courtship, right? You don't talk to a brand today and then next week you have a deal.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can take months, years even. They come to games, they see how the team is performing. You build traction, then now they're like, okay, now you're at a point where we feel like you're sizable enough for us to actually commit some money to this.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really good. Keeping a clean brand.
Yes.
I think that's very important. So what about now the road to BAL?
Okay.
What are the, okay, apart from being in a global stage, what are the benefits that come with you being participants at the BAL?
Yeah. So what NBA Africa does for all the teams that qualify for BAL, there's a little bit of monetary support to support with just like the logistics, flights and whatnot to actually go and compete. And then, there's prize money for the top 3 teams. But beyond that, I think, what it does is it elevates the profile of the team. So BAL started in 2019? It's 2025, and this is the first time a Kenyan team is playing, right? So even just for Kenyan basketball, it's really elevating the profile of the game. I mean, 3-4 years ago, basketball in Kenya wasn't something where you're like, oh yeah, that's a sport that as a country we can rally behind. It was never on the scene as like a, as something that the whole country can rally behind. It was either like athletics, rugby, women's volleyball, but basketball was just not really there. And so for us, one of the goals has always been to, like through Thunder, create a product where it's another sport that like gives Kenyans a reason to brag on the global stage, right? So, and I usually say the way like, wherever you are in the country, if you hear like Gore or Ingwe, you know what that is.
Yeah.
So our goal is like in the national psyche, when you hear Thunder, even if you're in Wajir, I come for a game, you know what that is. Yeah. So I think what BL has done for us is it has helped elevate the profile of basketball for us in the country as Kenyans, but also continentally. If you look at the breakdown of our followers on IG, for example, you'll find that about I need to check the updated numbers, but as of a month ago, about 80% were Kenyans, and then 20% were international.
Okay.
With a split across mostly Eastern Africa and then US, UK. So what that tells you is that like you're getting eyeballs beyond just Kenya. Yeah.
And does that like help you negotiate with brands which are already global?
It depends. I think I would say most of the brands that we are talking to are looking locally because that's where most of the eyeballs are. But then you'll find, for example, that you have brands that operate across Eastern Africa. Let's say certain banks that are Pan-African banks.
Yeah.
So when you have an audience beyond Kenya, or like now when you're going to play for BAL, at BAL, it's easy to tell them, listen, we have eyeballs beyond the country. We actually now like are on the continental stage.
Yeah.
So it does bring some value to those conversations. Okay.
Then can you? I want to shift to like talk about the math, just kidogo. Even if you won't give us the exact figure.
Yeah.
What does it take to run a team when it comes to the cost structure?
Yeah.
And how does it look like on your balance sheet? When do you like see you guys breaking even and all that?
Yeah. So it's a big investment. So what I'll do, I won't talk about numbers, but I'll give you the sort of the categories of expenditure and revenue so that you can see how they come together. On the cost side of things, there's the team element. There's player salaries and coach salaries. And then there's money that you spend to hire out the training venue. And then if you're going to be doing a lot of travel, there's a travel component. So for us, local games don't really have a big travel component because most are in Nairobi.
Yeah.
But if you're playing, let's say KPA, Platinum Eldoret, then you have to go to Mombasa, go to Eldoret. If you're doing BAL, now you actually have to go.
Outside.
The qualifiers, like for the first round of qualifiers, we played in Tanzania, so you have to fly over to Dar es Salaam. Second round was played here, which was good for us. So those are like the main cost elements on the team side. And then remember, beyond the court, there's also staff on the business side who are now, there's our media and content guys, the partnership guys who are handling all the sponsorships, the business development, the activations. There's all of us, right? And those guys also need to get paid.
Yeah.
So that's on the cost side of things. And on the revenue side of things, for us to date, our biggest revenue source is sponsorship. And then we also have some revenue from merchandise. And then now, because we won the league the last season, there was like a prize money that was, that we were awarded.
Yeah.
But the largest by far is sponsorship. And then sponsorship, so you have your kit, right? So you can have like, we have a partner for the front of the jersey, or a partner for the back of the jersey, or a partner for the shorts. And so we have 3 different partners for our kit. And then we have certain partners who we don't give them kit visibility, but because our platform has grown tremendously in the digital space, it's purely a digital partnership. So it's a cash exchange for digital content. So that's basically the different categories of revenue that we have. The challenges we've seen on the revenue side, one is with ticketing. So right now, all the games are played at Nyayo Stadium. So the federation controls the booking of the venue and then allocates, that's the game scheduling, allocates playing time to different games. And so because they control the bookings of the venue, they also control the gate and they collect the ticketing revenue. Do they split it with the teams? No, they don't. Ideally, they should, right?
Yeah.
Because if the teams were not bringing their fans, there would be no revenue to be made. That's a big challenge for us, that we are not fully in control of ticketing revenue.
And your games are usually fully packed.
We sell out all our games.
Sold
It's
out.
guaranteed.
Yeah.
In fact, playoffs, it was actually like a safety hazard because like people were standing at the exit. So like if a fire breaks down in here, like you all die.
Become chaotic. Yeah.
So one of the things that we are hoping to do in the next couple of years is actually set up our own facility as Twende Sports, which would then have Nairobi City Thunder as the anchor tenant. And then you can actually lease out the facility to other teams. We multi-purpose, so you can lease out to like basketball teams, volleyball teams. You can do concerts when teams are not using it.
Yeah.
So that's part of our growth plans. Revenue-wise, what else? I think the other challenge I would say is on the media side of things. So in more mature sports markets, the way it works is your league or federation would broker a media rights deal with a media partner. So an NTV, a KTN, a Citizen, right? Yeah. And then the media rights buyer, the TV station or whoever, would pay the league for that content. And the league would distribute those revenues to the teams in the league because all the teams are playing to create that content that goes on air.
Yeah.
We don't have a media rights deal with the league. So one, we are losing out on potential revenue from that. But two, which I think is, even the bigger issue is, it's limiting the eyeballs on the sport. So the reason many Kenyans don't know there's such a good basketball product is they've never seen it.
It's all available.
Yeah, and if you don't happen to come across a Thunder post or reel on IG or TikTok or Facebook, you're never going to know, right? Because it's not on TV, it's not anywhere. So that's been a big hindrance to visibility, not just for us, but for the sport in general. And so I think my hope is that in the coming season, our federation would do something to help increase the number of eyeballs on the sport. Yeah.
I just want to on that point when it comes to the revenues, are there other activities that would be considered a revenue stream that you guys are considering?
Yeah. So if you go beyond Thunder and now you look at the other activities we are doing. So I've told you about the facility, which will also generate revenue from just like ticketing and leasing out the space.
Yeah. And that's already on the roadmap. Yeah.
That's on the roadmap.
Okay.
So we're hoping to be able to do that in the next couple of years.
Okay.
And then the other side is the youth programs. So right now, as I mentioned, we have a team that plays in the Nairobi Street League. And so we call it youth programs, but it's still guys in like their early 20s, and whatnot. We can still raise, and we have before raised sponsorship off of that, so partnership. But then one of the things we want to go into down the line is actually having a proper youth development program under Twende Sports. So it creates a talent pipeline. Some can go through Thunder, eventually make it into Thunder, but then others can go into either other teams or play internationally. So then you can start to do like player transfers and things like that. So that's also in the works.
Okay.
That we want to sort of build out. I think Twende Sports is whatever, we were 2 years old now, and so you have to start somewhere, because if you start with everything, then you'll do nothing well. But so the idea was stabilize Thunder, and then once that has grown, use the brand leverage of Thunder to then build out the other aspects of the business.
Okay, that's interesting. Also, in the long run, you'll be having players who you will be selling to other teams for revenue.
Yeah.
Okay, that's quite interesting. So you've already started discussing about your youth development program.
Yeah.
So I was actually heading to that point. So can you tell us a bit about that program? I think that was the first one you started there before even you got Nairobi City Thunder acquisition. So can you tell us a bit about
So when
that?
we first started Twende Sports, there was a big focus on like young people, high schools, coaching. So we had a number of coaches that we would send out into different schools. It became a bit tough to manage because some of the schools were now wanting us to get into like actually administering a lot of administrative work for their programs. And then we were just not seeing a path to like breaking even reasonably, unless you're working like very top end schools. But we really wanted to do something that's like really inclusive. And so then it was like, okay, we know we want to be in youth sports, but we sort of need a moat to be able to come back to this thing. So then we're like, let's first focus on Thunder, then we can come back to this and use the Thunder brand to grow this even faster. Because, right now, because you have a team that has won the local league, qualified for BAL, if you start a youth program, there's a lot of credibility already. Because they're like, okay, you guys, you know what you're doing. So I'm okay sending my child, to participate in this. We also have a team in the street league. So one of our coaches, Deng, started a program called Dementa. So he's South Sudanese, and he works with other South Sudanese young men in Nairobi, like high school age, basically providing a platform for community, keeping them off the streets. And so he came on staff with us, and so we also took that Dementa program under our wings. And so we play in the Nairobi Street League. So we pay like the registration fees, and then Deng also works to place some of these kids into like high schools for scholarships. So that's also under our wing. So one of the things that we also want to see if we can do on the youth side of things is for certain programs like this, where there's like a strong social impact angle, actually raise grant funding that can then cover the operations of that program, so that you don't have to charge people, especially if it's kids who can't afford and just like need an outlet. We wouldn't be charging them, but then there'd be grant funding supporting that side of the program.
The investment when it comes to fundraising. Can you take us through that, the whole process, and do you have like a figure of how much you've been able to fundraise?
Yeah, I need to check if I'm allowed to share that publicly. But what
maybe we'll cut it out if it's not allowed.
So what I will say is that sports investment it's a long game. So even when you're approaching investors, it's not like a T-bill.
So who are your major investors? Are they VCs or are they angels?
So mostly angels. Individuals who believe in the vision. A number in Kenya, a number outside of Kenya, across different African countries who like saw what NB Africa was doing, like they believe in the growth story of African basketball and they want to be a part of it.
Okay.
And maybe just so that you understand like why people with money want to invest in sports. If you look at the global sports market, the US, the UK, the valuations of sports teams and so leagues and sports leagues are now so high that individual billionaires can't afford to own a team by themselves. And so a number of years ago, if you look at like the NBA and NFL, they were set up such that only individuals could be team owners. And then they actually changed their rules to allow private equity to come and own a stake in teams because the valuations were so high that individuals were getting priced out. And so then you also have people in the global sports market who are looking for sports assets that they could invest in and grow tremendously to realize like an incredible amount of value, but they're getting priced out of the US and the European market, and so then they're looking for sports assets in other parts of the world, which so Africa, different European countries, Asia starts to make a lot of sense. And so if you look at the people who've invested in African basketball, not just like Thunder or Twende, but NBA Africa, some of those teams that play in the Basketball Africa League, you will see some of those kinds of people who are like, okay, I want something where like the valuation is modest enough that it makes sense to come in, but I know that in 5, 7, 10 years, this is going to be a ridiculously attractive investment. So for us, it's been mostly angels, or groups of angels that have come together and now have like a syndicate that they can use to invest. So yeah, I think it's all people who understand that this is a 5+ year game. It's not like 1 year, 2 years, your money is back, because it takes time to build a brand. And then as you build the brand, then you're able to monetize it and then generate revenues that now are able to return capital to investors. So we raised our first round of funding 2023 as we were starting out, mostly friends and family, like put some money here, keep us going until like we can stabilize the ship, and then opened up another round sometime last year to fund operations for the next several years. And so then the hope is that in a couple of years, then the revenue will get to a place where actually the revenues are able to cover everything, and then you won't have to raise subsequent rounds.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the raising of capital, the runway that you have, was it for how long? How long was from the first let's call it pre-seed, that was for family and friends?
Yeah.
How long was that to take you?
So that took us 2023, last year 2024. Yeah, that took us up until about for a year and a half, about midway last year.
And have you had like
Midway
moments of cash crunch, like?
Yeah, we had a couple of those moments, but I think things have started looking up, especially now with brand deals coming through, because you find that you do a deal, it's able to cover a certain percentage of expenses, then you're able to renew the deal. Or for example, if we did a deal there's some deals we did in December for 6 months, right? Our following has more than doubled since then. So if we're renewing or doing new deals in June or July, we're not going to do them at the same value. And so those kinds of things are now helping us to like use revenue to like really cover any cash crunches that we had. Yeah.
So when you're doing these deals, you also like put a timeline for the deal so that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So is it a season wise or a couple of months?
So there's some that are for the full season, and then there's some that we did for like half the season. Yeah.
I think about when you educate a little bit about those deals. So it's interesting, yeah. So the which area of investment is like the biggest part of where the capital is going to? Is it the team? Is it the program? Or is it like even
Thunder. Yeah.
Okay.
The biggest part is going to Thunder. A combination of just salaries keeping the team going, but then also the investment into the brand.
Yeah.
So all the media stuff you see, doing different partnerships, and then we are also, our goal is to do a documentary that tells the journey of the team up until BAL and what that looks like. And so we are also investing in capturing a lot of archival content. So there's some content that doesn't make it to social media, but is like really good quality content for just like storytelling on the narrative side of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'd say a lot of it is going into Thunder.
Into Thunder.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears, Kiasi. Then you can tell us more about now sports business. What like you pursued masters in sports business. You have that understanding. Like what are we lacking when it comes to running sports organizations in Africa?
Yeah.
To think that we are really overlooking this thing, and it is it's a golden egg.
Yeah. I think that our challenge is not a knowledge challenge. It's a political will challenge. Yeah, people in positions of power are just not willing to do the right thing. They're not willing to pay the players what they're worth. They're not willing to do deals without taking 50% of the deals for themselves. So I don't think we have a knowledge problem. We just have a greed and a selfishness problem, if you ask me.
When you were starting out, I'm sure you did that like SWOT analysis, pestle analysis. So when you were doing like the political overview of things, what are the areas that you guys identify that these might be a hindrance to our strength? This will hinder our growth.
Yeah.
So
okay, if you take aside just like the political elements of federations and whatnot, I think infrastructure is a big one.
Yeah.
It's a big one because if you look at Nairobi Stadium, for example, the capacity is 1,000. Okay. When we were playing BAL qualifiers, Kasarani is 5,000, and we had 3,000 people coming for our games, right? So already that tells you you're missing out on a big opportunity because your facility is just small, and then it's a bad facility, right? When it rains, the roofs are leaking in Nyayo Stadium. We've had a couple of games where the power goes out just before the game. There's wiring issues. Sometimes the lights are out, so it's just not a good experience.
Yeah.
So what that also means is you also can't offer fans a VIP experience and then charge for a VIP experience because nobody is paying VIP money to come and be rained on.
Yeah.
If it's raining.
And a lot of VIPs are really coming in. I saw like
and they're still coming, which just tells you that like if you can just give a good product, people will pay. Will pay for that experience. So I think we have an infrastructure problem in terms of the quality of the experience, but also just the number of facilities.
Yeah.
It's tough also sometimes just getting the training time that you want at Nyayo, given how many teams there are. So teams don't have enough spaces to train. I think infrastructure is I would say it's probably one of the biggest challenges in the sporting landscape, and I think that goes beyond just basketball. I think for many other sports as well. People just don't have enough space.
So that's why it informed your decision to build a
the demand is there, and if you look at it as a creative economy challenge, not just a basketball challenge, because I've been talking to some folks in like the film, music, performance space in Nairobi, and you realize that even them, they're struggling. Like getting a venue to do the things they want to do is not easy, right? And so if you have a multi-purpose venue where you can do sports, do all these other things. So picture this, right? It's a weekend, you have a family of 4. You want to take your kids somewhere where, it's kid-friendly content and you can be with them. In Nairobi, your entertainment options are mostly like clubs, or jazz festival, which doesn't happen every weekend, right? But if you have a space where like in the morning you can go and your kids can train, and then in the afternoon there's like a concert, and at night it's a basketball game, and it's all in one space. And then like every ward in the county has that. So then you're not going to Kitengela from Dagoretti for that experience. Then it becomes something that's localized in the community. People are willing to pay for it because it's a holistic experience. They're like, it's value for money. I might spend maybe 3,000 on my family of 4, but it's fine. Yeah.
And this has just come to my mind. You say that you have managed to build like different categories of fans. You have fans who are supporting you from Eastlands. You have fans from the Uptown and all that. So did it happen just without you planning, or was it like a targeted attempt to like attract fans from?
A bit of both. A bit of both. If you look at the players who, Thunder were born in Shaurimoyo, so at its core, it's an Eastlands team.
Yeah.
So there are legacy fans who have been following Thunder from way back when, who just kept following the team, right? And so those we didn't have to go out and pursue. And then as the profile of the team grew, we knew that we wanted to build a fan base across the socioeconomic divide, right? And so people can come from Kayole, from Thika Road. We have fans that come from Kitisuru, from Westlands, from Nyari, right? And I think we're probably one of the few sports teams that has that kind of local sports team that has that kind of following. And I think for us, it was also just part of trying to build a product where every Kenyan feels like they can connect to it. And so, it doesn't feel like it's only for one group of people. If you look at basketball, even just like basketball in the US, it's a cultural product. Like like people, yes, there's the game, but people just find the athletes cool. They want to associate it. They want to associate with them. There's a confluence of basketball and fashion, basketball and music, especially hip hop.
Yeah.
Remember the Sprite ad, "Obey Your Thirst." So then Sprite became like the basketball drink because so there's a lot of basketball is one of those sports that has lent itself to such cultural fusion, and I think that for us it's also a chance to ride on that, right? Where people are like, it's like an aspirational brand. I want to associate with this brand. There's a cool element, like when a player makes a dunk and they have dreads, and I want like a young guy's like, I want to be that person. The girls are like, oh my God, can I get that autograph? You know, like those kinds of things.
Yeah.
It's like a cultural product, not just a sports product, and that's the goal. And so down the line, we're hoping to also just do collabos with, like musicians, artists, fashion, art, to just really pull in people who maybe sports wasn't like their thing, because we have fans who are like, I had never come for a basketball game before I came for a Thunder game, and now I like come for all the games I never miss, because they came and they like the vibes. The game is awesome, but then the vibes when everybody's in the arena. So you're really trying to build a product that's like targeting at people's emotions, not just a sports product.
Actually, my own personal story is that I wasn't really much invested in basketball or any sports until I attended a match. Like that was back in 2021. Felt the vibe.
And
then I just
kept coming.
I kept coming.
That's what happened.
Yeah. So that's really great. So when it comes to the engaging of these different fans, I think you talked about that. How you like did the survey and knew what they really want. So I think I just kudos to you doubling down on meeting their needs. Okay. So I think now I just want to veer off Thunder and look at the bigger picture kidogo of now sports when it comes to the ecosystem. What will you say are the things that need to be done in the ecosystem together? So it's like, I think you mentioned that it's an ecosystem that all players have a role. So what do we need to do as an ecosystem to or not speed track this, but at least to get there sooner?
So I mean, a couple of the things I had already mentioned. One is this media side of things. Getting a media deal for the league. All sports leagues actually should be on some sort of media station to just increase the fan base and give people access to the sport. Two is the infrastructure piece. We just need more facilities. And then three, I'd also just say maybe I'd call it commercialization or professionalization, but actually treating your sports property like a business. And really trying to monetize at every aspect of the business, right? So like for us, we monetize digitally so that, our following delivers a certain amount of value to us. And then, once you realize people want to stick with the brand, now we're doing merchandise, people can go and buy merchandise. So the kinds of things we're thinking about. So for BAL, we'll also have a couple of watch parties. For the fans who can't travel to Kigali. We'll have merchandise there. For a couple of brand partners, we'll give them the option to activate at the watch parties, for a fee. So I think sports teams have to be extremely aggressive and creative with how they monetize. And it's not always like the biggest brands. I think that when people think sports sponsorship, they just think either like a Tusker or a Safaricom or, like a Sportpesa. Those are excellent and that would be excellent partners. But I think what we have seen is that there's a lot of other brands in the market who want to tap into these communities. And there's value on the table beyond the biggest names in the market. And so you should also be intentional about looking at brands of different categories. Like for us, our brand partners, it's Mkopa, who are a fintech. It's Turaco, who are an insurtech. It's Nextwood University, who are an education platform, which is great for us because they also deliver some value in terms of, they've given us a number of scholarships for our athletes. So for athletes who, want to do something beyond basketball down the line, they have that option. And so I think you have to just cast a wide net.
But you've done something that's so unique because most of the brands that are associated with sports in Kenya are just the common. Oh, they're not common. We are used to Tusker, we are used to Safaricom, but we've never seen like next an educational an institution actually sponsoring a team or a sporting event. So, and as an investor, from your perspective, where do you see the market in like a few years to come? Yeah.
For me, I'm very optimistic. I think that this is a space where there's what I call a latent market. There's fans in waiting who don't even know they're fans because they haven't seen the product. But if you can get the product in front of them, you'll hook them, right? And for me, just the way our numbers have grown, I know that that's what it is. And so it's just, it requires a little bit of effort to tell the stories, to put yourselves out there, do interviews like this so you guys can understand where the team is coming from. But for me, I feel extremely optimistic. I also feel one of the things that also makes me optimistic is just the team that we have. Not just the athletes, but the team behind the team, right? So my co-founders, the management team, our staff are extremely committed to excellence and to seeing this through. And so I think as long as you have the right squad behind you, like you can go very, very far.
The Avengers squad.
Exactly. Avengers assemble.
So in closing, I'd give you an opportunity to maybe give your closing remarks.
So listen, thanks for tuning in. We'd love your support as Nairobi City Thunder. We play at the Basketball Africa League in Kigali from May 17th to May 25th. So tune in on YouTube. Follow us on socials. Nairobi City Thunder on Instagram and Facebook. Nairobi City Basketball on TikTok. And stay tuned, stay locked in. Big things are coming. And you can get our merchandise at nairobicitythunder.com.
I want to thank you for coming and joining us. My key takeaway is that there are fans out there who don't really know they are fans.
They don't know they're fans yet. They're just waiting to be converted.
They're just waiting to be converted. So I think that's a big one. And also, you can get this merchandise. We'll put the link on the description so that you can support Thunder.
What stage would you want the Thunder to one day to be able to play in the world? Like, if you think of a venue.
Oh, of a venue.
Or a stadium.
I'd probably say, so I have two, because I think that could be like a trick question. Two is our own facility that we own as Twende Sports, that then becomes like the it venue, where if like there's something happening in Nairobi, you need to be there. You need to be at the Twende Arena. And then two, I would say the Barclays Arena in Brooklyn, where the Brooklyn Nets play, because when I was in New York, I lived in Brooklyn and I lived next to the arena. And so I think for me it has like a sentimental value. So those two, our own arena as Twende Sports and then the Barclays Arena.
The stadium, is it like the one in Kigali?
Which stadium?
The stadium that you hope to build one day.
So we're looking at two tiers. So the one in Kigali, if I'm not wrong, it should be about maybe 10,000 capacity. Nyayo is 1,000 for comparison, 900 or 1,000. So we are looking at two phases. One is the 2,500 to 3,000 capacity, because one, it's a lot cheaper to construct, but then two, it's a sweet spot in terms of attendee numbers. If you look at entertainment activities in Nairobi, and we have the data on this. One of our partners, Hustle Sasa, they do ticketing for a lot of venues, and you can see that like actually that's the sweet spot for attendance, right? But then if you want to do like major events, right? Like huge concerts or international games, then you need a bigger facility. So then that would be looking at like a 10,000 plus capacity arena, which I think for that one we probably do in partnership with a developer, and then maybe we might not own it outright, just given the funds required. But for example, we could be like the anchor tenant, and then have like a small equity stake. So those are the two different categories of arenas we're looking at and how we are thinking. So if we're to do the first one, and then do the second one, later on, we'd convert the first one to now be like a practice facility or like a youth training facility. We can still monetize it fully, but then also be working with the other one.
Yeah.
All right.
Any other questions? No further questions. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you share, like it, subscribe as well. You can also drop a comment on any other conversation you want us to have on the show. Thank you, Sandra, for joining us. I'm really grateful and humbled to be here. So it's a wrap. Let's see you next time, guys.
Thank you as well.